Josh Brown, the PlayStation 5 Pro has been shown off, and the reception, at least in the few seconds I've seen, we're literally recording seconds after the stream finished, is a bit negative in the old live chat. Lots of L's doing the rounds, but we're going to break various features down as we have the first official word on what the PlayStation 5 Pro is, delivered by the sleepiest man of all time, Mark Cerny. But we're both big fans. And there's a lot to get to here. Initial reactions to what they've shown off before we start breaking down some features.
Well, initial reactions, I was, every time Mark Cerny started talking about a new pillar of the big three, I thought, Mark, you sly dog, I'm going to have to buy this thing.
No.
And then they revealed the price, which completely, truth be told, Scott, rattled me. It rattled me to the point where I thought it was a typo. Then I thought there might have been some kind of mark on my screen that was obscuring the number. And then even as we record this, I'm worried that I'm going to say the number out loud and that it's somehow going to be wrong, and I've there's been a mistake.
I had to double check. It's literally twice, 3 times over that was actually the number that they're asking for. $700, £700 for the PlayStation 5 Pro, £200/$200 more than the existing PS5 Slim, and the vertical stand is sold separately. Just if you're a vertical individual, they want to charge you something separately for that as well. Also, the only model that was shown off at the end of the PlayStation 5's technical showcase is a digital version of the PS5. However, leaks across the most of this year have mentioned a detachable disk drive. So whilst that's yet to be confirmed officially, it seems like Sony want to push towards digital stuff, or at least get the connotation out there that PlayStation 5 Pro is a digital system. But they didn't mention storage. They didn't mention gigabyte sizes, things like that. There's a lot more to get to. But let's do price first, and then we'll break down some features. And there's a lot more that has already been in leaks from earlier this year, but a lot of people probably didn't already see those things. But yeah, wider thoughts on the price.
It's prohibitive in a major way, I think, at least for the widest audience. And I know there's an argument to be made, and I was prepared to make it in this video, that it is a pro system. It is, in my head, a luxury item in the same way that an iPhone 15 or 16 Pro is. It's all the extra bells and whistles that the normal person, quote unquote, might not want, might not care about. They might.
I am the normal person.
Yeah, they might just want to sit down and pick a performance mode or pick fidelity. For me, I was looking at everything that was packed in the PS5 Pro, and it was what I was expecting in a good way. And I was prepared to pay the leaked price for that, at least at launch, which earlier today was circulating, and that was about £590, which is in and of itself steep, but I figured, it is a luxury thing. Fair enough. £700, $699 is a crazy price for me to pay, who already owns a PS5. I think it will eliminate a lot of those people potentially looking to upgrade who don't just kind of have that money to spare, because in comparison to the console they've already got, it's an upgrade, of course it is, but not a substantial amount to drop 700 big ones on a machine that they just bought 5 years ago. I think it might be attractive to people who are just picking up PlayStation 5 this year and kind of want to eliminate that question of, do I play in performance? Do I play in fidelity? Let's just get the best one and, split the difference that way. So I guess it's attractive to a certain demographic. It's just, I thought, maybe this is ignorant, maybe this is arrogant, sorry, maybe this is my ego. I thought I was like the target audience for this. I was there buying a PlayStation 4 Pro day one. I was looking forward to this, and suddenly I see that price and the games that they're showing off with it, all of which are games that I've already played, and it's not something I'm going to go out and buy at that price point at launch. May still get one, but I certainly won't be pre-ordering as soon as we finish recording this.
No, I thought it's interesting the way that they try to show it off, where you do all these side-by-sides of like, this is what it looks like on PS5 Pro, and it largely looks the same. And obviously, most of these things aren't going to demo very well in a live stream. You're going to have things that are bit crushed. You're not going to have visuals that are going to be, indicative of what it's like to actually play on a 4K display or whatever. But I do think the Pro half-step systems are almost impossible to market, because as was the case with the PS4 Pro, you can't have too substantial a leap forward because it undermines the fact that so many people bought a PlayStation 4 in the first place. But you can't do nothing at all because you're trying to sell this mid-step thing. Now, to me, it's just the fact that you're trying to put a price tag on what your R&D department has done in the years since the console came out. It's like you might as well charge for that, realizing what you can get away with having done the PS4 Pro. But the angle overall on selling it is one of the most fascinating parts because but the PS4 Pro, that came alongside, an industry that was just sort of beset with so many bugs, technical issues. Like most of the games across the mid-2010s absolutely sucked in regards to launch day. And the way that presentation was put together was like, hey, we've talked to devs. They had Todd Howard saying like we need the extra power and everything else. And this one is like zeroing in on a conversation which is very much of the time, which is the annoyance, at least I would call it an annoyance, of having to choose between a fidelity mode and a performance mode. And they just hone right in on that. The entire or most of the technical showcase was just showing that up, going like, oh, this is something no one likes choosing these modes. 3/4 of people apparently choose performance, which good on you. I'm with you. But it's interesting that that's kind of the reason to get a PlayStation 5 Pro is to then just choose a Pro mode and just be able to get 60 FPS with 4K and then awesome ray tracing and whatever else. And so to go down that route, they've got this whole big 3 style sales pitch of a larger GPU, so better rendering overall, advanced ray tracing, whatever that means, and AI-driven upscaling, which we can get to one by one. Thoughts on the whole, the trying to answer the question of fidelity versus performance, though?
No, like I said, like all of that messaging was working on me when I was watching it. In fact, I was seeing the games that they were showing off to showcase what it means to have this pro mode, to have, I think he kept saying almost fidelity-like, which to me gave him a lot of leeway. It was like a league, like he was advised to say that legally because it's not going to maybe reach fidelity mode, but it's going to try and it's going to come close. I was looking at The Last of Us Part 2, I was looking at Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, all games that I'm intending to replay hopefully towards the end of the year or into next year. And it got me wondering, do I wait now? Do I wait and play them on the PlayStation 5 Pro in this Pro mode and get the best version of them? Now that's being dashed a little bit, but I think it makes sense for them to focus on that sort of divisive element of the current generation. Like you say, 3/4 of people use performance modes, but across the board, performance modes, at least for my tastes, and I probably would be someone who plays on, the fidelity mode or the quality mode or whatever. I don't think they're good enough just for me personally. I was playing some games recently, completely can't remember off the top of my head. Star Wars Outlaws, that was the one. And the resolution bump to me just isn't worth the 60 frames. I know a lot of people won't care about that, but it does feel like a sacrifice when I choose performance mode. And it does feel like a sacrifice when I choose fidelity mode because you're getting that choppy 30 frames per second, which I can live with. But of course, I would, even though I'm a graphics man, I know I prefer 60. 60 feels smooth, it looks great. So I kind of want the best of both worlds. But I don't know, I wonder how dominant that conversation is. I wonder how many people are like you and I who kind of get caught up on maybe missing out on one mode or another, or how many people are just have their preferences already and won't be swayed by this because it's a nice addition, but they're not too bothered just going on performance or just going on quality and having a good time.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I'd love to get an answer to that, and people can like shout off down in the comments kind of thing. But the fact that this is such a ludicrously high price point is going to skew the answer to that question. The idea being that if you paid for this console, then you did care about answering that. But I think that because it is $700, £700, there's not even a conversion there. It is straight up is 700, like 69999, but dollars and pounds. I think that is going to put people off. When it comes to the AI upscaling stuff, though, Sony have a thing called PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, PSSR, which is their in-house version of this AI tool, this upscaling tool, which is Sony's own version of NVIDIA's DLSS, which is deep learning super sampling. I don't know anywhere near enough to be technically minded to break it down too far beyond the idea of a software-based answer to upscaling various video games. And the DLSS technology is apparently what's rumored for the Switch 2 or Nintendo's next system as a way to get a software-based upscaling answer to the resolution problems that obviously something like the Switch has had, and to get games running at 4K that weren't necessarily made in 4K in the first place. And so Sony have kind of got their own version of that. And in Sony's eyes, I guess you need the Pro to have enough guts to run that thing, to make everything run at 4K, as well as keeping the good frame rate. And these software-based solutions to frame rate resolution combos seem to be the way forward. always. But I think it's interesting that Sony have just potentially seen where this is going to go in the industry, because DLSS is already a big talking point as a solution to the problem that they're already talking about with the fidelity performance stuff. And then have gone, let's develop our own one, and then we'll tag it on the Pro and say that you need this console to run this stuff. Because my gut reaction to them talking about it was, surely the PS5 can do this as well. If this is a software-based solution, then I don't know.
Well, the thing is, right, like, we've had versions of this for, I don't know, a long, long time now. Like you said, there is DLSR. I'm not even going to do it because my voice isn't working today, Scott. My mouth isn't working. I can't do acronyms today. So we've already had software like this. Sony's had their own systems. They've used third-party systems. We've had 4K checkerboarding. We've had this upscaling in the past. We've had texture AI upscaling, in Tomb Raider earlier this year. So it's not like it's necessarily a new technology. I do think it's interesting that Sony's opting to build their own in-house version. I'm interested to see what that looks like in motion when we're playing the game, because like you said, like the side-by-sides on that front especially don't really necessarily do it justice in a 9-minute presentation. So that would be something maybe that you only really see when you've got it on your own telly and you've got your own resolution that you can see on whatever size monitor you're using. So it's an unsexy thing, I think, this software that they've used. I don't know. It's kind of like, to me, that's the version of HDR this time around. Like the PlayStation 4 Pro was one of that's big pillars was HDR, and that was another kind of system that you didn't really understand if you saw it, because most of us watching the presentation at the time wouldn't have had a HDR screen. Our computers weren't HDR. You needed to get a television that would support it and support the right version of HDR at the time. So I think that is one of those issues where a few of the things, maybe even like the ray tracing that Sony mentioned, it's a tougher sell at 700 quid, because a lot of the stuff you won't really know how it runs or how it's affecting the games in comparison to the ones you're already playing until you have it. And it's like, it's a big risk for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that I just keep coming back to the price, and I also keep thinking about Sony. I think about Sony history. I think about how much they overcharged people for the PlayStation 3. And I know that they argued that they had to back then because the Blu-ray diodes were so rare and there was all such new technology. But right now, we have a whole bunch of PlayStation 5 price hikes going on over in Japan. I think the system is 82% higher than it was at launch 4 years ago. And now, with the advent of the PlayStation 5 Pro, you've got them going £100, $100 more than the leaked price, which is really interesting in terms of just saying, what can we get away with? What will the market respond to? If this is a luxury product for the most hardcore gamers, the people who care the most about this stuff, what can we get away with? And then will that trickle over into, oh my God, you've got to see how this game runs on a Pro, and then see if that gets wider, especially towards Christmas. I think they are in the hubristic mode that they've been in a few times before, and they're just seeing what they can get away with. But yeah, for another pillar of something they talk about, the larger GPU, various leaks across the year have mentioned the PS5 Pro running 45% faster in regards to rendering, and also the advanced ray tracing stuff alongside it. Now, they did show off PS5 Pro games running. I did laugh at Jedi Survivor being one of those games and showing the water. And just being like, because that thing was completely DOA broken when it came out. When you would stand next to a body of water, that game would just tank. So I get that they're getting out there going like, hey, you wouldn't have that problem on a PS5 Pro. But the problem there was optimization. It was development time. It was being able to patch it after launch. The elephant in the room, the glitching elephant in the room is forever optimization in dev windows. It's just, you can keep doing this with the half-step systems and getting us to pay another huge amount of money hoping that fixes everything. But until you solve the actual turnover of game developers and stop losing 10,000 people a year, then you're not actually going to fix anything. So to me, it's all part of the same conversation in terms of, can developers even use this stuff? And the hope that something like PSSR or DLSS, or VRR, if you have a TV that's capable of variable refresh rate, these instant fixes kind of thing, just how applicable that stuff actually is when you get to game by game releases.
I think it's a great point. I think both things can be true. One is that third-party games especially need better optimization. You can't have something like Jedi Survivor come out and in both of its performance and quality modes just have the game tank when you go into the water. I love that game, but that stuff was inexcusable, right? And will a more powerful system just fix that without work from the devs and the publishers? Probably not, but I do think that's something definitely to bear in mind. If you're buying this console for third-party games, not every one of those developers, not every one of those publishers is going to utilize this new horsepower to the best of a game's capabilities or the best of their capabilities. However, I think it's worth to invest in the R&D to make an upgraded system like this, because we have seen incredibly well optimized games still force you to choose between a bunch of modes, still force you to have that compromise, so I suppose you can argue. And I think, like always, man, like with the PS4 Pro or the Xbox Series, the Xbox One X back in the day, like the people who are going to utilize the features of the Pro the most are going to be like the first party developers. It's going to be your Insomniacs, your Naughty Dogs and whatnot. So I would say that should be, I think, your primary reason to buy this if you're going to buy it, because those developers are the only ones guaranteed to fulfill the potential of the Pro and to fulfill the potential of your investment. If you're relying on your EAs or Ubisofts or whoever, they're not going to have as much of an investment in it. It's not saying like they're lesser publishers or they're worse or whatever, but they are not incentivized to support the Pro in the same way that Sony is, because it's their own thing and they're, going to profit from that the most.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like, there was a bit where Mark Cerny did mention that various like patches and upgrades are in the works for certain titles, but they obviously favoured first-party stuff. Interestingly, before I move on to the wider leaks and stuff, one of the games shown was Assassin's Creed Shadows. Yeah. So the assumption being that although they didn't, unless I missed it, they didn't put a release date on this thing just yet. It still seems like it's going to be imminent. Shadows is out in November, so there is that. To pivot into wider information about the PS5 Pro, though, stuff that wasn't in the technical showcase but has been reported by The Verge and reported by Insider Gaming, we're apparently getting a new controller, a new version of the DualSense. Now, it doesn't seem to be a DualSense Edge, which was the customizable premium controller from January 2023. Instead, it's just a new standard DualSense model that's going to be £5 more if you buy it by itself, and it has better triggers and more battery life, apparently. Battery life's the main thing. Anyone playing Astrobot right now, which is not as many of you as it should be looking at that game's sales, will know that Astrobot absolutely shreds battery life on a DualSense. So it's cool to have that bundled in with the new PS5 Pro, and that will be the new DualSense. However, obviously £5 more, $5 more. Kind of sucks when the controllers are already $60, £60 anyway. Alongside that, from The Verge, we have 100 gigs more memory, which is good. There's always the case that when you get a console home and you look at the actual list of the storage, it's always less than what it was marketed as. But 100 gig more, even on those reduced numbers, is better. And the console will apparently support HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision. Now, there's a little bit more, but thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, you mentioned it earlier, but the idea that Sony is just hiking the prices up because they can is something that I cannot ignore. You mentioned the DualSense Edge from the other year. That was another thing, like the Pro, that I was all in on, that I thought I was going to get, and then I was just priced out. £200, I think that was retailing for, $200. Like
yeah, it was half the system price.
Just absolutely outrageous. I mean, I love my PlayStation VR 2, but that thing retailed at over 500 quid as well. You've got games going up to 70, but the PlayStation Portal being seemingly overpriced, even though that's doing quite well. And feels like we're in an era. I've seen a lot of people tweeting out that, they can't believe that game consoles are going up. The price is going up as the generation goes on, not going down. And that is absolutely crazy, and it's crazy to have the PS5 Pro within that market. I mean, you mentioned so many other things there, Scott, as well, about the idea of, like there's a state of play apparently coming. I think we need to see more games from that state of play. It was cool seeing, titles that have already been released, something like Shadows that's coming out imminently, but I think we need to see something properly utilize the power of the PlayStation 5 Pro that is on the horizon, most likely from Sony's first-party stuff, because I don't think, maybe you can, but I don't think you can sell a console for 700 quid on the basis of old games, and especially when previously Xbox, for instance, has been so good at supporting old games and updating them anyway. I know Sony has been as well. They released Last of Us Remastered last year. They've already done patches when the PlayStation 5 came out for previously released games, but I don't think you can just rely on that.
No, man, not at all. I think that like if they were able to say, hey, you buy a PlayStation 5 Pro and you put any game disc in it, and it automatically upscales, or you play any game that you already own and it upscales, it does the PSSR stuff, it gets in there and it AI upscales everything, and even a game from the PlayStation 4's launch or whatever that's backwards compatible then looks absolutely gorgeous. That would be one thing, but I think by the sounds of it, the way Sony described it, it's going to be per studio choosing to do a PS5 Pro patch, which ironically is unlike the way that something like VRR works on fancy TVs. Like I have an LG CX, and if the game supports the console has the variable refresh rate stuff turned on, it just works. Like you don't even notice the frame rate being helped by it, but at the same time it does work. Star Wars Outlaws has a third graphics mode that you can just toggle on, that doesn't even show up if you don't have a VRR TV. So to a degree, we're getting into the weeds with all this stuff. Like I said it 7 years ago with the PS4 Pro, but we're becoming PC gamers. We're starting to look at every little individual permutation of just how do I get a good performing video game, and I maintain that should not be our problem. So I'm always sick of that stuff.
The thing is, though, right? Like, in its own way, the PS5 Pro seems to be confronting that head on in a way and saying, look, yeah, maybe we did veer too far in the options and PC territory with the launch version of the PS5. Let us take all that off your hands. Let us just decide for you and manage to smash both sides of the coin together so you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore.
If that was a problem that they hadn't come up with in the first place, if that wasn't an industry issue that was born out of optimization, development time, etc., then that would be fine. But it's such a wider issue that then they get to come back in and go, we've got the solution, guys. We're going to sell you the solution to the problem that we put out in the first place. Not them first party, but it's such a wider industry issue. And even Sony aren't guilty of, if they were this pristinely managed operation, you wouldn't have Last of Us Factions being cancelled or whatever. Like I do think it's a much wider issue. And I can't get away from seeing the, we're going to offer you the solution with a £700 price tag kind of thing, pay to make the problem go away kind of stuff, even though I'm leaning a little bit towards hyperbole in a way, but I do genuinely think that.
No, it's interesting, and I'm hesitant to turn this news video into one of our podcasts, Scott Tilford. We'll no doubt revisit.
Subscribe to the wind-up.
Subscribe on all good podcasting platforms. But I have to say that I see where you're coming from. There are industry issues with optimization. However, I don't think this sort of crossroads we're at now between being forced to make these decisions is a problem that has been invented that they're now trying to make you pay to go away. I do think it partly came from the desire from players to have those options, to be locked off for so many years on consoles with only 30 frames per second or only a certain resolution. And we finally got those and realized that's kind of not perfect. It kind of comes with compromise, a lesson that PC gamers have been understanding for years, right? And I can't look at Sony with how well optimized a lot of their games are, not every single one, but a lot of them, and think that it's like the problem is the developers in that way. Sometimes it certainly is, but sometimes you do just need that extra hardware to get the games over the line so you don't have to make those compromises from a tech standpoint, like the ray tracing thing. I know we kind of joke about what that is and how it implements games, but I do think you can see it from that perspective as well. Like, I love ray tracing when it's done well, but so many times you see ray tracing put into games and it's kind of like the worst version of it, and it looks all right, it looks okay, it doesn't look a huge deal better than screen space reflections or anything that we have been used to for the past 10 years. So hopefully just getting this bigger amount of raw power and horsepower alleviates those problems and allows devs to kind of just boost those settings as much as possible in a way that they might be constricted to doing now. Don't know.
That's what you would hope for. Yeah, you would hope that it's just like you have a vision for a video game, sick. Just aim for it, and then no compromises, and you can put that thing out. We'll call it the Pro mode. You could have called it a PlayStation mode multiple generations ago, which is my issue. But still, you can call it a Pro mode, and then you can just execute on that thing, and that's perfect. And the very last thing is something that has retroactively kind of been confirmed, coming from a leak from a good few months ago. An individual called Brian Potter, who leaked various bits of information that have now been confirmed. And so part of that leak was a state of play for September 19th. month. So now that we're coming out with the PlayStation 5 Pro demonstration, the assumption being that maybe that's where we see more Pro modes or games that are going to be launched on PS5 Pro or whatever, because that could fold in first party, third party as well. Thoughts on that thing? I think I kind of want to see a bit more, although to me, I was kind of on the fence. I don't mind paying to make a problem go away kind of thing. I would like to just play the best version of a video game, but as soon as they said it was £700, like, I'm out, I'm done. It's going to be a few years in the future type thing. And so I'm kind of largely distanced from this, unless you somehow show off a version of the PS5, of a game running on Pro that looks demonstrably better. I think they've lost sales doing it this way, but that is my approach.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do think, we need to see games. We need to see the roadmap of what's to come from PlayStation across 2025 and across, the next half of this console generation, essentially. I don't think that'll come in a state of play, because state of play players have been so low-key compared to showcases. We've had a few good ones. The one earlier this year was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah.
But it's always like tepid enthusiasm, isn't it? It's always like, it was pretty good. It was all right. And to Xbox's credit, while in my opinion, I don't think they've had as good first-party releases or exclusives over the first half of the generation, I do think their plan for the second half is much more exciting and much more tantalizing. Like, we know stuff like Fable's coming, Perfect Dark, Gears, E-Day, like a lot of games that I'm personally really excited for, and I need Sony to finally start showing us some stuff like that. We've had a lot of big hitters, but what are we buying into the ecosystem for? I think this showcase today, just having the PS5 Pro available, is good for people who are just jumping in now, like I said, who want to play all of these old games. But I do think Sony also needs to give people a reason to want to upgrade as well, to want to spend that money for Death Stranding 2 or Marvel's Wolverine or whatever else they've got cooking that's unannounced. Like, they need a strong showcase, man, even before this was announced. But now that this price point is out there, it feels like the pressure's on even more.
Yeah, man, definitely. And that's the wider ongoing conversation, is that, to me, I look at a Sony that is reeling from their live service plans going up in smoke and then trying to pivot back around to single player. The potential huge success of Astro Bar, at least online, but then that, in terms of the YouTube likes and the social media posts, hasn't really transferred over to sales, at least just yet. And where the hell they want to go going forward, and how they actually want to utilize this technology, the hardware, software combined. But let us know what you think down in the comments below. PlayStation 5 Pro, are you convinced? I think it's impossible to market, but we'll see.
You know what, man? I'm going to tag one thing on here. If they announce Red Dead Redemption 2's next-gen upgrade and it's PS5 Pro exclusive, I'll be buying it.
It's Bloodborne 60 FPS. That's what you hang on. They could not do it until now. £700. That's how you do it.